Let's start with the Jets and Colts. We might disagree a little bit here. Which side are you on and why?
So I like the Jets, and I've seen it either 3.5 or 4. Try to always shop around. I mean, obviously, lines themselves are harder to get movement on. We'll talk later about some like picks where you can find some variance, but I think the Anthony Richardson decision is actually the right long-term decision. I just don't like it for this particular week against the Jets pass rush, which is getting a little bit better. Even when they got housed by the Cardinals last week, they got a couple of hits on Murray. Murray did some nice throws from the pocket under pressure. I don't think Richardson will be that accurate, will make the right decisions. I think he just needs to get his reps, and I think this is going to be a tough road to hoe for him.
Now, talk to me about who you think is going to make a difference on the offensive side of the ball for the Jets. And I want to hear more from you about Anthony Richardson. But from a prop perspective here, this is a guy who I thought was really alive to win Offensive Player of the Year preseason. That certainly is not going to happen. But who do you like to break out a bit here?
So we're talking about Bryce Hall here, and fantasy owners know what I'm talking about, knowing like he's not playing poorly. He was averaging 5 yards a carry even in that loss against Arizona. Just the game script was so negative. They fell behind so quickly and so thoroughly last week that they kind of went away from the running game. It's my kingdom for actually using Bryce Hall in the passing game, too. He's still ideal as far as that goes. If we remember the game against Buffalo a few weeks ago, he was fantastic in the passing game. They need more of that, and I think they have to go that way. You shop around as always in the pick side of things. You can find some variances there in the player props. But I like the over 68.5 rushing yards for Bryce Hall quite a bit. I think the Jets will be playing with the lead. I know we may not agree with that, but I don't think they're going to be down 3 touchdowns either. I think this is going to be a game where the running game is a lot more relevant, and I think that's going to benefit Bryce Hall.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a close game. It might, make Indianapolis a potential teaser candidate. We've seen a lot of movement from 3.5 to 4 at most shops. If that got up to a 4.5, and you can go through the 10 on that one, that might be something worth discussing.
Sure.
I'm curious, what's your take on the total in this one? I believe it's sitting at 44 in most places. I know last week, and a garbage time touchdown killed it for us. We were in agreement on the under 39 between Tennessee and the Chargers, and it was good for 59 and a half minutes. But what are your thoughts about potentially going under on the 44 here?
I kind of like it. Again, it's kind of a bet against Richardson and the Colts. I don't know if they're going to have Michael Pittman back this week. I don't know if the passing game is going to work a whole lot there. We're always worried about, teams that, play for 60, as our friend Scott Van Pelt always likes to say. They, we do have to worry about that. But at the same time, I just think that this is going to be really tough for the Colts. Their offensive line's a shambles right now. So many injuries and so much trouble protecting. I know that Richardson at least has some mobility, but he also counteracts that with some mistakes too, and just lack of accuracy.
Yeah, definitely a mistake-prone quarterback. So talk to me about the move. I know that you've got some opinions about potentially who's responsible for this move. What are your thoughts on this moving forward?
I think this is dictated from above from Jim Irsay. I think he's one of those hands-on owners that does a lot as far as that goes. If you read the comments by Steichen, it reads to me as like almost like this is a hostage situation. He's holding up today's newspaper saying everything's okay. They're treating me well. And we're going to go with Anthony Richardson for the rest of the year, and we'll see how that goes. I don't really think there's a whole lot of conviction behind that there. I think he was kind of forced to do that. And I actually think it's probably the right idea. When you draft Anthony Richardson with 10 college starts under his belt, he's going to be a project. You have to get him more reps. I think it's pretty clear as day that he needs more playing time. If you're going to have a long-term plan, you got to play Richardson. Instead of trying to do the moral hazard thing, do whatever it does to protect your job this year. If you have an owner and a GM that can get behind the project and say, hey, your job security is fine, you need to start this guy. You just do it.
I think that's a brilliant take, and I agree with you 100%. The difference is head coaches, doesn't matter if you're in contention or not, they're always playing to win. The owner can afford to tank because the owner ain't going to get fired, right? So what you said at the end there was a really important caveat to that. If Steichen has the security, get on board, but maybe Shane Steichen feels like he may not, and that Joe Flacco gives him a better chance at winning now. Interesting dynamic in there in Indianapolis. Definitely an organization that isn't afraid to micromanage a little bit from above. Let's get to another game here. Cleveland coming off a bye week, taking on the Saints. New Orleans laying just about a point and a half. This one close to pick'em territory. What do you like here?
I like Cleveland. I think we got the dead cat bounce from the Saints last week with the new coach. That was great that they played so hard. But remember, Atlanta way outgained the Saints last week. It took 3 non-converted field goals from Younghoe Koo for the Saints to be able to hold on. 2 misses and 1 block. Plus, Kirk Cousins doing some weird things down in the stretch there, including the throw on 4th down to end the game. Just some odd decision making. I don't think they benefit from that. It's also the Jameis Winston revenge game. So for whatever that's worth, I don't really play too much into that, but I just think it's funny to say it. But I think Cleveland coming off the bye, that charged atmosphere that the Saints had last week in a division game, first game against their beloved interim coach. I don't think that really exists this time. I think that Cleveland's going to take care of business.
Yeah, I think the Saints, this could definitely be a spot where they come back down to earth a little bit. Not only did they get the little boost from the interim coach, but also there's a big boost anytime I feel like the Saints play Atlanta. Those two teams, it might be a bit of an underrated rivalry in other parts of the country, but those two teams absolutely hate each other. I don't know if the Saints are going to get up for a game against the Browns the same way they do against the Falcons. Let's look ahead to primetime a little bit. Sunday night football, Chargers, Bengals. The Chargers, another slight favorite, about 1.5 to 2 points here at home. Not really much of a home field advantage down there at SoFi Stadium. Can the Bengals win in a shootout? Do the Chargers defensively have the edge? What do you like in the game? And then, of course, what do you like in the prop market as well?
Yeah, huge contrast in styles. I love games like this. One team really likes to grind in the muck, the Chargers under Harbaugh. We talked about missing out on our under, only the second time all year that the Chargers have missed out on an under. But the Bengals, Joe Burrow is him right now. He is playing as good as he possibly can. So is Justin Herbert. So I think you're going to see scoring from both sides. I just think it's a game where the Chargers are going to have to try to open it up a little bit more. And for that reason, I like all the over Justin Herbert props you can find. And this is where you really shop around. Earlier, when I was looking for some things I liked to talk to you about, Herbert at 228.5 passing yards over on Prize Picks really stood out to me. Whereas I think at Bet Rivers is 238.5. So usually I don't get that wide of a band, but I do think the Bengals secondary is pretty weak. I think they're having a hard time getting stops. I think this is going to be a game played in the 50s.
Oh, wow. So you would go for a Chargers team that hasn't allowed 20 points to an opponent yet this season. You'd go over on the higher posted total of 48 in this one?
I would. Burrow and Chase are at a level right now that we haven't seen in a long time. It's not just against the Ravens secondary either. I think the entire key here, though, is the Bengals need to give Burrow just a modicum of time. That is the one thing, because the Chargers pass rush, if Khalil Mack goes crazy, for instance, that could be an issue there. I know Bosa's always banged up, something to watch for there as far as that. Watch the practice reports. But I do think this is going to be a game where the Chargers still could get there. But the Bengals are playing for their season, first of all, too. I think there's a whole lot of things there. This is a head-to-head matchup, a possible last wild card spot. Really critical, interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Thank God that the NFL was able to flex the Jets and Colts out of Sunday night and give us this treat in primetime. Speaking of primetime, we are just seemingly, it feels like a few short hours away from the Commanders and the Eagles in primetime. Philly pretty universally now laying 3.5. There were some threes earlier in the week on the board. Do you have a lean on a side in this one? Anyone you're looking towards in the prop market for this game? What are your instincts on how to approach Thursday night football this week?
Every time I try to doubt the Commanders and their renaissance this year, I've been wrong, and yet I still have a slight Eagles lean on this one here. Hate having to give up, the hook, but I just feel like Jaden Daniels is kind of started. Their teams are finding ways to scheme against him just a little bit. Of course, it helps that he's been playing hurt a little bit too, so I think that is part of it. And the Eagles have figured out things offensively from their malaise earlier in the year. And so I just think this is another game there where the Eagles have been kind of operating at a good sort of peak right now. I think they'll win by 4.
Ooh, wow. So you think this one comes really close to being right on that number?
Yep, I do. It would not be one I would play. It's more one that, like, if we have to pick everything, that's the side I'm picking.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement. This feels like a stay away spot for me. I'm going to try to see how I can approach it when it comes to the prop market, but that 3.5 number does feel spot on. This guy's always spot on. Jeff Erickson, make sure you catch his terrific work over at RotoWire. Really appreciate the time, man.
Anytime. Thanks, Joe.